Hi, this is Dave from Turbot. If you're looking for short videos on Guardrails features, you're in the right spot. Today we're going to look at some of Guardrails' advanced tagging capabilities. Let's get started by logging into Guardrails and then logging into the AWS console using our federated identity. Here in the EC2 console, we have 3 running instances. Each of these instances has no tags currently, but let's set some static tag values on these instances. So we will get started by using the Guardrails policy called EC2 instance tagging template, and we'll add 3 static values in there: cost center, owner, and environment. So we'll add those static values into the template. We'll go back out to AWS, and now we can see after a refresh, each of these instances is now tagged with those static values. But what if we wanted to add dynamic values? What if we wanted to add dynamic information? One of the great features of Guardrails is our ability to be able to add that dynamic information, including who created the instance and what time it was created. So we'll do that by editing this template, and we'll switch to calculated policy mode. Calculated policies allow you to combine the input from a GraphQL query and then use that information in a Nunjux template. So we'll get started here by actually writing our GraphQL query. Here we'll query the existing resource and we'll pull the metadata from the resource. When we look at this, the metadata for the resource just consists of the account ID and the partition. If we want to pull in and look at how this calculated policy would work at runtime with the metadata from the instance, I need to select that instance as an example so I can see how the calculated policy would render against it. For that, we'll go out to the AWS console. I'll grab the instance ID, come back and paste that in as our test resource. And now we can see I've got additional information. I can now see the region name of the instance, and I can also see the created by date. Now let's write our template. Here you can see we have a template. If we have the values for created by and for timestamp, then we will add those as tags to the resource. You can see that I've got some extra spacing in there. It would not be a problem. I could run this as is, but the OCD in me is getting a little bit of hold. And so let's add these dashes into the template. And what that does is remove white space from the logic statements. And now we've got 2 tags with no extra white space. You can also see here that we've got the full ARN of the user for the creator. This is simple to modify. If I just wanted the name and I didn't want the full ARN, I can simply edit the template here, add a split function, and then select the second position, the number 1 in that array, and I'll get Dwight Schrute as the name. Now we update this template, go back to AWS, and again, refresh, and then we can look at an instance and actually see that we have the create timestamp and the creator in there. Now, if you look here, you see that the owner name is spelled incorrectly. It's D-W-I-G-T, Dwight, instead of Dwight. How would we correct that? So this is another type of dynamic correction that we can do. So let's take a look at how we can actually correct a misspelling within text. So for this, we'll go to we'll create a new tab here, and I'll go to resources and create a new resource called a Turbot file. Give it a name, a description, and an AKA. AKA is essentially how we refer to it programmatically within the system. It gives us a value that we can do. Here you can see that we've created a YAML object. Owner is the name of the tag. The values, and so now we're interested in the values for owner. And we basically said, hey, look, there's a correct value called Dwight, and here are the incorrect values associated with it, the common misspellings associated with this value. And you can imagine using this in different ways, but now whenever Guardrails sees one of the misspellings in the owner tag, it's going to replace that value with the correct value. So let's watch that in action. I've set that, and now I have to adjust our calculated policy. So I need to add the tags information from the resource, so I need to see what the current tags are, and then I need to bring in that Turbot file that we just created, and I'll use the resource ID, the AKA of that file, in order to bring it in. Once I have that, again, I will grab the I can see that I brought in the file, but I want to see the information, the tags for the current resource. So I'll just grab another example resource, go back to the calculated policy template, say, hey, look, let me test this against this resource. And then as you can see here, I can actually now see all of the metadata for the resource and the tags that are currently on the resource and the rules for processing the tags in my GraphQL query. I'm going to replace the template with some different logic that actually compares the existing tags against the rules. And so I'm going to set variable name tags to the existing tags. I'm going to set a variable name rule to the rules list. And then I'm going to use this helper function called transform map that takes the existing tags and the rules and then outputs what the resulting set of tags would be based on the rules. And here you can see on the right, it has corrected Dwight to Dwight. Can now save that, go back out to AWS, and again refresh. And now we can see that our owner tag has been updated to Dwight across all of these instances using that one set of rules. So that's misspellings. What if I want to adjust the key? Very common use case would be that over time the standards for my tags change. So let's say we used to have a cost_center tag. Now we want to have a cost center tag with no underscore to make it more compatible across multiple clouds. And let's say we've switched from using abbreviations for prod, development, etc., to using the full word. So we want to switch PRD to production. How would we go about using that same rules template? We'll go back over. I'll just simply edit the rules template at this point. I'll add the cost center tag and I'll say the incorrect keys associated with this cost center tag are cost_center. And I'll say, hey, when you replace this, remove the previous tag. I could, in this instance, leave the previous tag in place, but I'm going to remove it. And then we're going to use the same thing that we did for the owner to adjust production to become, adjust prod to become production. Here you can see that not only am I using static value PRD, but I can also use regular expressions in this spot and replace anything that matches a regular expression with this. Let's save this template and see how it works. We didn't have to adjust anything in the calculated policy this time. We just edited the rules. And now if we come back out and refresh, we can see that we've changed environment to production from PRD. And we've also changed the cost center tag from cost_center to cost center run together. If I dynamically now edit the tag, Guardrails is continuously monitoring and real-time events going on here. So if I update this tag to, instead of production, to dev DEV, what's going to happen? And go back, refresh, and look again, and Guardrails has changed that to development, matching the rule that we set in the environment. The other instances of this are still production because we haven't changed those. The dynamic nature of the rules template allow you to solve a lot of scenarios in that particular case. Finally, let's take a look at how we would approach the problem of validating this cost center tag. So right now we have Scranton-1138 as the cost center tag. How do we know that's a valid cost center? How would we validate that against data that we have available? Well, one of the things we could do is programmatically add a list of valid cost centers to the environment. So I'm not going to set up an API to do that today. We could do this via an API and synchronize it. I'm just going to simulate it by creating a new Turbot file, calling it cost centers. We'll give it a description, DMI cost centers, and an AKA cost centers. And then I'll just paste in some values here. You can see New York, Scranton, and Stanford. If you look here, Scranton 0113 is the actual correct cost center. So our cost center on the tag is actually incorrect. In this case, we do need to update the calculated policy in order for these new values. So I'm going to bring in the cost center Turbot file. And again, I'm just going to copy an instance ID so I can see what this looks like. And looking at the data, here you can see I have the tags, and now I have the cost center data instead of the rules. I could have both, but to simplify this use case, I'm going to do that. Now let's take a look here, a variable named approved cost center to the list, to the cost center data. Then we're setting the current cost center to the value of the tag cost center. If cost center is in approved cost center, we're then going to bring in data from that cost center rule. We're going to override the owner tag to include the owner from the cost center, and we're going to add a department tag with the department associated with it, and then add a new tag called validation and say that this is a valid cost center. In the case where the cost center is invalid, we're going to add a new tag saying the cost center is invalid. And now you can see that our cost center is invalid because we have Scranton 1138 in there, and we're looking for Scranton 0113. We'll update this. We'll go back out to EC2, and we'll do a refresh here. We can see that what we've done here is we've added, in this particular case, we've added invalid cost center onto this instance because the cost center that's there is not valid. Now, at this point, we don't know what the valid cost center is. You could do some logic to try and adjust that, but we've just kind of notified the end user that their cost center is invalid. Now, they can go in and actually fix it. So if they go in and fix it to 0113, we can see that not only has Guardrails set the validation tag back to a valid cost center, but we've also changed the owner and added the department sales tag to this resource. And Guardrails will continuously monitor and make sure those are up to date over time. So as that cost center data is updated and changed, it will import those tags and apply them to the resources within your environment. Thank you for watching. If your organization could benefit from Turbot Guardrails, get started today by visiting us at turbot.com/guardrails. See the video description below for links and details.